Okay, so the last part of, or middle part of C was just our theories of conditioning. Okay, so we're going to be thinking about Pavlov and Skinner and all these kinds of things moving forward. Okay, so the conditioning theories. So Pavlov's dog, remember, wasn't thinking about looking at this. He was just doing an experiment about what came out of dogs' stomachs when they had food. But he found that when the researchers were walking towards the dogs would suddenly recognise the sound of the researchers walking towards them or the sound of a bell, and they would then start to associate that with the food and would start to salivate even though the food wasn't arriving, because they had this response to the footsteps or to the bell. Okay, so in Pavlov's conditioning theories you had, all right, the unconditioned response to the stimulus. So if you just ring a bell, it's just a bell. There's there's nothing about the bell that the dog understands. I do the clicker. Henry didn't first understand what the clicker was all about. Okay, it's just a thing. It's not a response. You just hear the clicker. They hear the bell, or they hear the researcher walking towards them. There is no response. But if we combine the stimulus and something with it, in this case the food, then we can get a conditioned response. Okay, so we ring the bell, we give the food, we've now got a conditioned response. The dog now understands that the bell means food. So if we now ring the bell, we now get the salivation. We have to put the two things together. We have to put the stimulus in there, and then we get a conditioned response. Stimulus on its own doesn't really give us anything. Why is this important when it comes to conformity and conditioning? Well, we can apply it a little bit to human beings, all right? You can get a reward if you do something well, okay? Then you might then see certain things and you suddenly go, oh yeah, we're going to do that particular thing today. All right, so we can increase people's levels of conformity and obedience by doing very, very basic conditioning. You see a door shut at the beginning of the term, doesn't really mean anything to you. Now you associate the fact that the door being shut to being late, and you also associate the fact that I'm going to come out and talk to you and it might make you quite uncomfortable. Okay, so that's Pavlov. Next one was more about operant conditioning, all right, actions and consequences. So the whole point, or the problem with just basic conditioning and behaviour, is if you don't tell people what's wrong or right with their behaviour, then they're never going to know what they need to improve or not improve as they then move forward. Okay, so it's important that when we are trying to get people to change their behaviour, that we give them feedback. Okay, and we say to them, yes, this is the behaviour that I want you to exhibit. This is not the behaviour that I want you to exhibit. All right, without feedback, it doesn't really help. Yeah, because you don't know what you have done right or what you have done wrong. So we need to give them feedback, and then we need to provide some kind of reinforcement that that behaviour is good. So if somebody does something well, we tell them that they've done something well. All right, we don't always need to give them a reward. It can just be something as simple as saying to them, yes, that is good. That then reinforces in their mind that the behaviour that we want them to exhibit is a good thing. All right. If they do something that we don't want them to do, then we can give them negative feedback on that. All right. And we can say, no, this behaviour is not what we want you to do. All right. We don't necessarily need to punish them. That's taking it a little bit too far and doesn't necessarily help somebody if they don't understand why their behaviour isn't what we want. So we need to provide that feedback to them. We need to provide the reinforcement, whether that be positive reinforcement or whether that be negative reinforcement about their behaviour. All right. We can go to punishment, but it doesn't help people to just learn. Okay. So really that was it to do with conditioning. Pavlov and his dogs, the stimulus, the unconditioned response and the conditioned response. Plenty of videos and stuff like that you can find online for it to help you as well. All right. Because it is classical conditioning, we can find it everywhere. And then operant conditioning, all right, thinking about the feedback and providing that feedback to people to allow them to modify their behaviour rather than just, punishing them.